pat yourself on the back because you are right here, right now for a reason. Welcome to the On Purpose podcast, where together we will empower ourselves and others to live lives with more passion and purpose. Man, I'm loving our new intro. How you doing this morning, Jared?
I'm fantastic. Thank you, Jill, for putting that together. I hope for our listeners it gets them in the mood to really start thinking and committing full speed to living this purposeful life and getting that practice in.
Yeah, and bringing a little energy. We got a little tune, so I think that's gonna change up the dynamic of the On Purpose podcast just a bit.
Yeah, it's amazing to me how much music influences mood. For me, I'm very musical. I'm very musically inclined to listen. I suck at playing, but yeah, music just sets the tone for so many things.
Yeah.
So I'm trying a different little camera angle for you guys today, trying to clean things up and continue to move forward. And we're excited to have you with us today. And as always, we are on episode 31, which is crazy considering we just started this thing in March.
Yep, every single week for 31 weeks in a row. Extremely grateful and fortunate to have such an amazing On Purpose community sticking it out with us every week and executing on their purposeful practice every week. So last week's practice was on being seen. What are some reflections that you had about being seen, Jared?
I make it a point to just try to get in front of different communities, interact with different people that I don't normally see or that I haven't been predisposed to. So for me, thinking back on that, going out to the doTERRA convention with my wife was a fantastic opportunity to see a bunch of different people that maybe our paths in life wouldn't cross, which I think is one of the really special things in life is when you take down your barriers, when you take down your preconceived notions of why you should or shouldn't interact with people and you find common ground, it's amazing what you can learn about people.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So how about you?
Definitely. I had a really good experience last week attending a community outreach program called Thrive. They go every week to this community in Westside San Antonio, and they set up tents. They feed about 200 people. They pray. They preach. It's made up of multiple church groups, and it was really cool because I went in there early in the morning, and I thought I was just going to be pouring coffee in the line and making pancakes, but then they're like, oh, you're on prayer duty. Go approach these homeless people. And they had these little prayer request cards, and they're like, get to know them, speak with them, and ask if you can pray for them. And, a lot of these people are pretty rough, and I was like, oh, you found the right guy, So I was like, don't you worry about this. And I went over there, and I had some resistance. I don't need a prayer, But the fact that they saw me, they saw that I was unrelenting with it, and if they didn't want to pray, I was like, well, let me just go ahead and express some gratitude for you then. And even the people that were really ungrateful, this one guy's like, oh, the cops are always picking on me, I was like, all right, let's talk about what we can be grateful for. Do you mind if I say God or Lord? All right, thank you, God, thank you, Lord, for the privilege of waking up today, for the ability to see, touch, taste, hear, smell, to have 2 arms, 2 legs. And then I could kind of see the guy. I was like, all right, I guess I do have stuff to be grateful for. So it was very nice that they could see me, that they could see what I've been practicing, and to have an impact. So it was nice to go into a brand new community, and one of the organizers, I posted about it on Facebook, reached out and was super grateful, and it felt good to be seen. Our hard work that we're doing in here, to go spread it, and it was definitely seen. It was nice.
And that was that video of that young girl?
Yeah, that was that same event. She was running around.
She was awesome.
Yeah,
so those of you in the community, make sure you follow us on our social media. Ali and I are not just here once a week talking about this stuff, but we practice it every day, and we're very open on sharing what we're involved with, our ups and downs in life. And what was really cool is you shared a little bit of that girl's day, and it's you get out there and you allow yourself to be seen, suddenly you start to see others. And I think for many of us, when we close ourselves off, it kind of ties into where we're going today. When we close ourselves off and we don't let ourselves be seen, then many times we won't see others. Or what we do see in others is the negativity and the stuff that we see in ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's to live that whole life, your most wholehearted life, it's going to require you to move past things you've done in your life that you're not proud of. Forgive yourself, forgive others, and really just be okay being whole, right? Whole is success, whole is failure, whole is learning, whole is succeeding, it's falling down, it's getting up again. And be okay with that. And that's one of the things I love about Ali is he's very much a practitioner of what we talk about. So good job on that.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, check us out. Daily actions towards gratitude and purpose over here. So check us out. And ironically, you just hit on today's episode, which is overcoming resentfulness.
Yeah.
How do you overcome resentfulness and anger and these negative emotions? Simply by forgiving.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to be talking about today, because sometimes that can be really, really hard to do. And at least for me, sometimes I wonder, is it always the right answer, right? When is it appropriate to choose not to forgive? So we're going to dive in deeper on that, and I'm really excited to explore your insights here on that.
Yeah, it'll be fun to hear back from our community on their thoughts, because forgiving is very personal, right? Like some people will be the victims of horrific things in life that nobody should go through. Should they forgive or should they not forgive? That's kind of the question. It's different for everybody, but to me, when I think of life and I think of the heaviest stuff I've carried, it's generally when I resented either the person or the actions that took place. It's heavy.
It is heavy.
Right? And I guess here's what I think about that. When I'm resentful, it means I still haven't finished or completed the processing of the incident or the emotions. It's almost like I stop it halfway through. When I think about that for a second, I don't truly believe you're designed to be resentful, right? We live in a world of abundance. There's an abundance of food. There's an abundance of land, right? We have abundant everything. As humans, we have abundant emotions. Happy, sad, love, hate, anger, joy. And I think preparing for this episode and really thinking about the times I've been resentful in life is because something happened and I got angry, I got upset, and I chose to stop and stay there. I didn't allow my body and my spirit to go 360, which would be okay, anger, learning, accepting, choosing to be happy again. Like I just stopped it. I got stuck. So the visual I have in my head is I'm kind of like that, the phone or the computer where it's just running in that circle and it's not loading that next. It's just stuck on what you already read and you're trying to get to the next page or whatever. That's when I think, to me, when I think of resentfulness, that's what comes to mind is you're just stuck in that one set of emotions. You're still downloading the next page, but you're not progressing. What do you think? What are your thoughts on resentfulness and the impact it has for you?
Well, resentfulness would be considered a negative word by most because it has a negative impact on the body, on the mind. I have been resentful before, and it's not productive. It doesn't help me. It doesn't improve me. Maybe it can satisfy very small parts of the ego, right, of just having that pride and staying resentful. But it really isn't a very good tactic. And I used to be a resentful person. I used to be someone who was very slow to forgive.
Yeah.
And I think now in my more recent years, I've realized that forgiveness isn't about letting the other person off the hook, or frankly, at least to me, it's not about the other person at all. It's about you. It's about the person doing the forgiving. Forgiving is releasing and letting go of those feelings of resentment and anger and choosing not to hold those emotions anymore. Doesn't necessarily mean that if you forgive someone, oh, you're all good and buddy again. I've forgiven people and have chosen not to communicate with them anymore. And that's okay. I think that you can do that. You can forgive someone. And to me, forgiveness is really choosing yourself to let go of anger and resentfulness.
Yeah. And I agree with that. And I think there was a period of my time where I held on to a lot of things that I thought could have been better in my life, that people should have done differently. And it wasn't until I really started thinking about me carrying that day to day as like carrying a backpack full of weights. Like I'm in my 30s or 40s, and I'm still thinking about things that should have been different when I was 16, when I was 17. Well, why would I want to carry that same incident, the same emotions with me for 30 years? It's over. But by staying resentful, by being angry about it, I never allowed it to truly be over. I continued to relive it. And maybe I didn't relive it every day, but it was still a weight I carried because I was looking for that. It was still on my psyche. It was still in the front of my thought. When I decided to really set myself free, is I was like, you know what, man, what happened to me as a teenager doesn't matter now. Like every day now, I still get to choose something different. And when I allowed myself to process that and then I forgive, life became lighter.
Do you have any recent experiences?
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's like my dad, to be perfectly honest. And I don't know if we ever talked about this in another episode, but when my parents had me when they were really young, they were 16, 17 years old. And
that is young.
It's crazy young, right? They're growing up with me. But there was a period of my time where, I looked at my dad and I was like, gosh, that is a lot of what he does is what I don't want to be. Which was fine kind of as a teenager stuff because it helped me set boundaries. It helped me make different decisions so I wasn't that. But then I went off and I had success. And I had my own family. And I had my own kids and my own career. But yet I still carried that weight of I don't want to be like this. I don't want to be like that. I'm going to do everything not to be like that. And then it dawned on me. My kids were of the age that I was when I made those decisions, right? Now, my kids were the same age that I looked at my dad and said, I don't want to be anything like him. I don't want to be anything like this. And I started thinking, my God, what if I've unintentionally done something to them that I maybe thought was right, but they view completely different? What if they never forgive me? What kind of relationship would I have? And it broke my heart.
Forgive you for what?
For whatever, right? Because think about this, like my dad, there's not like one incident where we're like, yep, this is the defining moment. It was just a small series of decisions he made to put his life in one way and I went to another. But I don't think like it was ever intentional, right? And as parents, for you parents out there, we try our best, but it's an imperfect science, and we may do something that our kids are like, well, you transferred me schools in the 5th grade, and that was the worst thing ever, and I'm never going to forgive you. That's their perspective, but on ours, we were like, well, we put you in a better neighborhood. Mom and dad got a better job so we could provide more and take you on more. Does that make sense? Like we were trying to do what was best, but when I started thinking about, okay, what decisions have I made that maybe my kids will resent me for? And if they never forgive me, what kind of relationship would I have? And then I started thinking, well, shit, I haven't forgiven my dad. And I'm actually modeling for them carrying behaviors for 20, 30 years. And I'm not allowing that relationship with me and my dad to change. I'm not saying, hey, Dad, you weren't perfect. I wasn't perfect. It's all over, man. Life is good. We've moved on. I love you for what you are. I continue to see him as what 16-year-old me saw him as, which is unfair.
Yeah.
And it's heavy. And I'm telling you, when I had that recognition and I became aware of that, and I started thinking like, okay, I got to forgive him in the hopes that I can have a good relationship, whatever it's going to be, I don't know. And then 2, so that I can hopefully, if my kids feel like I was a terrible parent or I did some dumb things or whatever, they don't carry that for their whole life, and it stunts our growth.
So how do you practice forgiveness for that? So with this recent realization, Did you pick up the phone, call your dad? How do you practice
Yeah, it's been
forgiveness in
slow.
this?
I'm
Yeah.
not gonna lie, it's been slow because we're not super close. We don't live near each other, so it's just small acts. Whereas before, I wouldn't text him ever. I send him an occasional text. We get on an occasional call just to check in. It's not super deep at this point, but it's more contact than we've ever had before. And then for me, I just realized like he's human. And he's gonna make mistakes, and I'm gonna make mistakes, and I'm not gonna just continue to carry every mistake that he's ever made or that I've ever made with me forward. Like, okay, there's something for me to learn from that, and let's move forward. But it's not, I think that's one of the things that really keeps people from forgiving or moving forward with other relationships is they think it has to be an all or nothing, right? Like,
Right.
okay, I don't like you up to this point, now I forgive you, now everything has to be great. No, like there's still boundaries, there's still safeguards you can have in place.
How do you practice forgiveness when those feelings of resentfulness and anger
Yeah.
start to come up again?
I think first off, you got to be aware of it. Why am I feeling this? Is this something that just happened? Right? Because I think there's two different thoughts here. If something just happens to me today, we'll have to process it. Part of that processing may be anger. It may be wondering, why did this happen to me? It may be then dissecting, okay, what do I need to learn from this? What is the purpose of this? Why did this happen to me? What am I supposed to learn from it? And then applying those lessons. But if something's 30 years old and you're still carrying it with you, it's probably time to move forward.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. I'm giving it some thought
Yeah,
as well as you're saying this. And for me, practicing forgiveness is more of something to look out for me, kind of like I was saying
absolutely.
earlier, to where it's like when I feel that negative anger and resentment towards someone or something. Perfect example, the bouncer situation,
Yeah.
where my friend and I were assaulted by these bouncers, and we reacted, and we were the ones that got charged. And a big part, I spoke with an attorney, and I want to get justice. But now, after some time has come by, I've realized that, like, I don't even want to deal with it.
Yeah.
Thankfully, like, we weren't really injured, a couple scrapes, and it's not even worth my time and energy and any anger or resentment. The primary reason I wanted to execute more on that was so it doesn't happen to others.
Yeah.
But it's forgiven. I truly don't. The cost of having to carry a little bit of anger and resentment towards the situation, towards those people, isn't worth it to me.
Well, and that's a perfect example, right? You had the situation. You immediately felt an emotional response, anger. I'm going to publicize this. I want to go after these people. I want to make sure this never happens again. And then as you slowly move past it, you start, okay, now I have this. Now, okay, now maybe it's not what I thought it was. I'm moving to these emotions. Okay, now I'm in education. Now I'm in, like, man, maybe I should just move on and put this behind me, right? Because you allowed yourself to run the whole cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And now imagine and I think that's a fantastic example. Imagine if you just stopped 2 days after the incident. Where were you at?
Oh, I was ready to do everything I could.
Angry, fired up, pissed off, ready to take on the world. What if you just stayed there?
Mm-hmm.
That's resentment.
Yeah.
Right? You'd have just short-circuited the process that you naturally have. It's okay to feel all those emotions. It's 100% fine. But when we stop allowing ourselves to continue past, you wouldn't have learned.
Yeah.
You would have literally stayed in that moment. Now, let me ask you, how long are you going to stay in that moment? Because I guarantee we have listeners out there. We know people that have had incidents just like that of some magnitude in their life.
Yeah.
That they've carried for 30, 40 years because they've never fully processed it.
Yeah. That's an extremely important point, is letting it process, because I think, me included, a lot of us will try and just automatically move to what we believe or what we think we know is the right thing, right? Oh, I'm feeling angry. Nah, I can't feel angry. I need to forgive. But
Yeah,
it really is important to
for
let
sure.
those emotions run through and analyze them. All right, I'm pissed off. I'm pissed off. I want to go work out. Why am I mad? Letting them run its course. And we even had a pretty big disagreement. We had
Yeah,
a very big disagreement to where I publicized everything. I was in that moment. And Jared, you called me and were like, man, I thought we had talked about not sharing this. And I was like,
yeah,
well, yeah, I'm not sharing it on the podcast. And we had a big disagreement. And I think part of that was me processing
for
that.
sure.
And part of that was me choosing to be seen in what others may think is a negative light,
Yeah,
right? To where I don't think there's a right or wrong answer in this situation, but the fact that we disagreed and had different viewpoints on that really helped grow our bond and our
yeah,
relationship,
for sure.
and seeing how both ways can have their pros and cons, right? Choosing to publicize that, choosing to be seen about a negative event that some others may think negatively of, like, oh, look at look at
Yeah,
this guy getting in fights or whatever. Thankfully, though, the response, at least on the post, is very positive. A lot of people came together to support, but that was a part of me processing a little bit of that anger, resentment, and really truly being like, I don't want this type of atmosphere, environment in my front yard right here. But I think that was an important example of sometimes you do need to let anger run its course, to let resentment run its course. And it's always best not to make any big decisions with a lot of emotion, and realize that emotions need to play their course. But at the end of the day, forgiveness is for you. A lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to forgive him. I don't want to forgive her, because then they'll have this. Is no. It's about,
it's freeing.
it's freeing for you,
Yeah.
not for the other person. You're not freeing the other person. So
Yeah, and I think going back to your example, it kind of ties into our whole community piece and who do you surround yourself with. Because if you just when you're in that angry stage, if you're surrounded by a bunch of other people that just live in the angry stage, it's easier for that to go a whole different route, right? But because of who you surround yourself with, yeah, I disagreed with you, and I was like, hey, here's some opposite things to think about. Doesn't mean I'm right or wrong, doesn't mean you're right or wrong. It just plants the seed so that you can think about it while you're processing. You have more than one way of looking at it. And I think that's important. And that goes back to, like, a lot of times forgiving for me happens best when I don't try to do it all by myself. And that's probably what I've been most guilty of a lot in my life, is I'll take on burdens, things will go on, and I have different roles and different relationships, and sometimes I'll just clam up when something bothers me. I'll just try and tough through it and just push through and be like, I'll deal with it later. And I've found that I'm most effective and I'm happiest when I share, right? And like that story with my dad, that lived in me for many, many years. I didn't tell people, but I always knew, okay, this happened at this time in my life, and I don't want to be anything like that. Well, I had moved so far past that ever even being possible. Like, it wasn't even possible to do that anymore. Yet I had never talked about it. I had never shared it. I never allowed myself to fully process the whole circle, like we were talking with you, to where I could grow and move forward. Because with every incident, everything that happens to you, especially so like your deal, you're supposed to learn something from that. That's truly what I believe. Nothing happens to us just out of sheer randomness. We're supposed to learn from that. And by processing all the emotions, not just staying in anger, not staying in resentment, you truly get to learn whatever lesson that is. For me, forgiving my dad was a lesson that I need to forgive him, in the hopes that I can set the stage to where my kids would forgive me if I had done something. I don't know what your lesson is. I have some ideas on what your lesson could be, but only you know what your lesson is. But if you don't run the gamut of emotions, you truly don't learn it.
Yeah. Now, when do you think it's appropriate to not forgive? Do you always forgive yourself? Do you always forgive others when you have feelings of anger and resentment, whether it's towards your own self or towards others? Do you find yourself always forgiving?
I mean, always is a tough word because it means there's no exception. I would say, and I would venture this is true for most people, we are much quicker and many times to forgive other people than we are to forgive ourselves. Right? We are so hard on ourselves. So many people carry the weight of what they've done wrong, things they wish they had done better, things that didn't go right. They carry that day to day to day forward to where they're never truly just experiencing something new. They're like on this cycle of just reliving what's already happened. Um, so yeah, I try to forgive others for sure, just because, like I said, I don't want the weight of not forgiving you to hold me back. I want to do a lot of things, and in order to really be who I want to be, not forgiving you and carrying whatever situations around that I didn't think were right without fully processing, it's just too heavy and it slows me down.
Yeah.
Now, forgiving yourself, I think, is a slower process. But for me, I've gotten much better at it because I really focus on, okay, this happened. I don't like it. I don't want it to happen again. But in order for it not to happen again, in order to minimize the odds that it happens again, I can't just stay pissed off and angry at it. I got to figure out, what do I need to learn? And to me, when you truly look at, okay, this unfortunate thing happened, this bad circumstance happened, what do I need to learn? Now you're thinking more logically, right? You're thinking, okay, learning versus just the emotional response of the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I have some similar thoughts. I think that I believe it's always the best to forgive when you're ready. It's the best practice for you to live your best and most purposeful life because you're no longer consistently carrying resentment and anger. However, I don't think you should forgive when you are still consistently having emotional anger and resentment come up. If you're feeling angry and resentful towards someone or something almost on a daily basis or every other day or even weekly, whatever it is, if it's still coming up, I believe that you need to hold off on trying to forgive and really focus on those emotions. Ask yourself why you're feeling that way. Really explore those until you become ready to forgive. So a lot of like what you're saying of
Yeah.
letting those emotions run their course. But I think that after that, after you get to a place to where these emotions aren't consistently coming up and you're feeling angry or resentful towards something, then you can forgive. I saw this amazing video of this man somewhere from East Asia. He was a Muslim man, and this criminal was robbing a store and killed his son. And it was very sad. The son was completely innocent. I think he was like the store clerk or something, just working at the store, and just murdered his son, cold blood. Obviously, this man has every reason to be extremely angry, resentful, and hateful towards this person. So they put the father on the stand, and all he had was words of compassion and forgiveness. It's like, I forgive you, for you to kill my son in cold blood like that. I can only imagine what you're going through, what hardships you have. And it made not only the criminal, but his words made a lot of the entire courtroom cry of just like this extreme compassion that this man was able to get from someone that killed his son. And I'm sure you as a father can relate to that,
Sure.
of how much just anger and resentment would naturally come up of someone killing your child. And that video, I remember reflecting on it and be like, wow, like I think that forgiveness, no matter what it is that you're forgiving, is eventually always the best route. Once you can get to that place, I don't think that there's any crime, anything really, that's worth holding anger and resentment for.
No, I think you'll find studies out there all the time that talk about forgiving as like a stress release, right? Your body's just naturally more in tune to what it's supposed to be doing. Holding on to anger, holding on to those emotions, not letting them run their course is not good for you. But you said something that I want to go back to, make sure we're clear on this, is forgiveness is not immediate. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be.
Right.
So when you're caught up in the angry stage and you're still hurt by it, that's okay. Too many times we want to rush and skip it. Like, stay there for a minute. Figure out what's going on, but don't mask it. And I think that's where too many people struggle. And I see this a lot as you're talking about that. I got some thoughts and images going in my head. You were wronged and you're angry about it. Well, for you processed a lot of the anger by talking about it. By sharing it, whether it was social media, you and I talking, you and whoever else talking, you didn't keep it in. Right? And I think that's a key that people really got to understand is sometimes you need to unload the burden you're carrying. Who do you have in your circle that you can talk to? Right? Because I guarantee there's listeners out there today that are still carrying the weight of things that happened to them in their childhood, things that happened to them as a teenager. And if we're carrying it that long, one, we're stuck in a cycle, we're not truly processing. And two, I would say for many people, we try to hide from it through unhealthy habits.
Yeah.
Alcohol, drugs, intoxication of whatever form. Because instead of running the process through so we can move forward, we stop where we're at, and now to get away from it, we look for unhealthy forms. When I think of the impact alcohol and drugs have had on my family, which has been awful, I generally think of this topic. Something happened at some point to almost everybody I know, and they never moved past it. And instead of processing all the emotions and growing, they got stuck right here. And in order to escape it, intoxication became the answer. A temporary escape.
Yeah.
But then you wake up the next day and it's there again. Right? And look where you're at. When was that, like a month ago now, your incident?
Yeah. 3 weeks, 4 weeks.
Every conversation you and I had progressively got calmer. The first couple were pretty heated. Right? The first couple were very much like, no,
Yeah.
this is, wow, here's my thoughts, here's yours. We're at it. But the more you processed, now you have different, and it doesn't mean we still don't agree on all of it, which is fine. But you were allowed to process it. You chose to step forward and process and learn from it, not stay in the loop and then hide from it.
Yeah. Yeah, the processing is very important. And I have a question for you of actually a personal forgiveness that
Yeah.
I've recently done. And I've chosen to forgive someone, but just to myself. I haven't really reached out and said I forgive you. And I think primarily because there was never like really an apology. And I have chosen just to forgive that person.
I love it.
Not
I
have
love
any
it.
anger or resentment. But I'm wondering, do you think that if it's a certain person, right, that you have felt wronged by or betrayed by, do you think that it's necessary to let them know
No.
that you're forgiving them?
I don't, because I think you hit it on the head. Forgiveness is for you. Right? Forgiveness is for you. There's some that, like, to close the loop, you may want to talk to them. You may want to let them know so that they're not wondering what happened. But I think there's others where, no, I don't need to talk to you. Like, you clearly violated. You did something so egregious. Like, I don't have to tell you what you did. You know what you did. We're never going to be on the same path. We're never going to be friends. Like, it's done. Like, don't get me wrong. Forgiveness doesn't mean like everybody just gets to trample me and I bounce back. Like, no, I have boundaries. Like, you're not going to just walk all over me. But what I'm not going to do is carry your decisions, your behavior, your misgivings with me for the rest of my life. Like, I'm going to forgive you, and then we'll never see each other again.
Yeah.
Because think about this. Like, I think about just some people I know, and they can literally go all the way back and tell you how their kindergartner teacher wronged them, how they were wronged in the third grade. Well, dude, that was 30 years ago. Forgive them. One, you're never seeing them again anyhow unless you stayed in that same little town. And two, forgive them and move forward for you, because they're not probably carrying it around like you are.
Yeah.
They probably don't even remember the incident you're thinking of. It was just another day to them. And yet here you are 30 years later still carrying around what happened in kindergarten, not moving past it. Now it's affecting your adult relationships. It's affecting your relationships with your kids. It's affecting you completely processing emotions to the point where alcohol is a huge piece of your life in an unhealthy form, where intoxication becomes your release because an incident that happened 30 years ago. Forgiveness is for you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm glad you said that, because I think that there's really not a need. There's really not a need all the time to let the other person or people involved in a certain situation that you forgive all of them. It's really just about letting go of those emotions. And I think I had actually looked up the Google definition. So Google's definition of forgive is to stop feeling angry or resentful toward someone or something for an offense, flaw, or mistake. So it's literally, it has nothing to do with the other person or other people. The term forgiveness, according to Google, is just to stop feeling anger and resentment.
Yeah. Which means in order to get there, though, you have to process the whole thing. You don't get to skip it. You don't get to fast forward.
Yeah, you got to go through
You've got to go through the process. So I would encourage our listeners this week, and I know sometimes this gets kind of deep, and honestly, sometimes doing stuff like this is not going to be the most fun for you.
Yeah.
Because you're going to rip open an old wound. But how long has the wound been there? And I guess let me throw this analogy to you. If you had a cut on your elbow that was scabbed up since you've been 6, would you just continue to walk around with the cut, or would you be like, okay, what do I got to do to get this thing healed? I've had it for 40 years. Mm-hmm. Well, maybe you're going to have to rip the scab off, see that it's affected, do some different treatments and move forward. But emotionally, we don't do that a lot of times.
Yeah.
We try to suppress it, we hide it, we put it different places in our life, but it affects us every day. It affects our relationship. It affects who we're going to become.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard sometimes, and sometimes it's not fun. And that's why we go to the fun things, right? The dopamine hits, drugs, alcohol, even food, anything that causes dopamine to mask that. Because sometimes it can be hard to sit through the anger and the emotions to really reflect on why am I hurting me, right? That it hurts sometimes to rip that scab off and see what's really going on. But that's why it's important to put things in place to exercise on your purposeful practice to make sure that we can move forward, because carrying that weight is just slowing you down from being your best you.
Yeah.
And I think that Jared and I, and probably a lot of our community listening, can think of specific examples where, like, man, I was holding resentment and hatred for a long time, and it didn't serve me. So
No, it held me back.
Yeah.
And yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I tell you, forgiveness is for you. Growth is for you. And every day that you choose to continue to carry your past with you, unprocessed, unforgiving, is another day closer to dying that you didn't get the best out of.
Yeah.
Right? Like when you think about, like, every day you move is one day closer to you dying. You may want to move past some of the shit that happened to you when you were a kid or a teenager. You may want to fully close that chapter and live the next one. Mm-hmm. And I think that is what motivates me, is just understanding where I'm at in my life, where my kids are at in my life. I'm like halfway through this game. what happened to me as a kid, I've learned those lessons. I'm ready to move on and learn new lessons. But if I continue to stay where I was, I can't even learn today. I can't learn from you tomorrow because I'm still thinking about stuff 30 years ago. And I don't want to die being the person that was still worried about stuff that happened in 5th grade. Because 5th grade was a long time ago. And unfortunately, many, many people just spend their lives there. They spend their lives replaying all the things they think went wrong to them.
Amen.
Instead of just forgiving and moving forward.
Amen. See it too much. See it too much. You ready to hop into some practice?
Yeah, let's get these guys wrapped up.
So just to share a thought I had is obviously Jared and I don't always have the right answers, right? Well, a lot of this is
Sure.
based on what we believe, our experience and our opinion. So it's really important to submit your purposeful practice, especially if you disagree, right? We had both shared that when should you not forgive? I believe that you should always forgive once you get to a point where those negative emotions aren't consistent, right? Once you've dealt with those emotions, but we both believe that it's always the better decision to forgive when you can get to that point. Some of you may think that no way. There are some situations where you should not forgive. So let us know in Purposeful Practice. This is going to be a really good practice, and I'm excited to get some submissions. So the first piece is take inventory of times in your life where you did not forgive yourself. Why? Second piece is take inventory of times in your life where you did not forgive others, and why? And then third piece is what would be different in those scenarios if you chose to forgive yourself and others? And then, of course, the most important piece is to email your practice to us at onpurpose.official@gmail.com.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm excited to see the community keep growing and to really help everybody move forward. And when I say everybody, I'm including us. Like, we're on this journey with you guys, and it's important that you move forward in life. Resentfulness keeps you right where you are. It's like being stuck in the mud, and it's time for us all to move forward. So I'm excited to see what you guys come up with. And again, if you disagree, we're cool with that too. This is our journey together, one big community. So please continue to share the podcast, whether you're listening on Spotify, iTunes. Apparently we're on Google Podcasts now. I didn't even know that was a thing, but that's good too. Or YouTube. The only way the community continues to grow is by your help. And we're so thankful and humbled that you choose to spend part of your week with us every week. And we're thankful for it. So help us continue to grow so we can continue to serve more and grow our community. Anything else for him today, Ali?
I think that's it. Just a reminder, we have our first On Purpose workshop Saturday, October 19th. Going to be amazing, heavily discounted ticket cost of $25. We're all, including us, going to leave with a blueprint, about 2 pages of 2 to 3 pages-ish, ballpark, of how to live your most purposeful life that we ourselves, you yourself, will design. So mark your calendars and get your spot reserved because there's only 20 available and there's not 20 left anymore.
Right, yeah, so the link's up on our Facebook page or in our bio on Instagram. So get there, register for the class. We'd love to see you and meet everybody in person as we continue to develop the On Purpose community. So remember team, life is far too short to live any other way than on purpose. We'll see everybody next week.